Looking at right now is the man page for a command called ls, and you can see over here that it's used to list directory contents. Having a look at the synopsis, it gives us more information about how you would go about executing this command. So we have the ls command, and then we have options. Now, anything that is enclosed in square brackets, those would be optional entities. So what this is telling us right now is that you can execute the ls command without any options. However, the ellipses afterwards, outside of those square brackets over there, tells us that you can make use of multiple options. Similarly, you can see that the ls command may be executed against an object, and that object would be a file, as opposed to something like a username, for example. So the object or the argument would be a file, and again, it's optional. You don't have to specify a file. However, should you want to specify multiple files, you can. And again, it's as a result of that ellipsis afterwards. So when it comes to documentation in Linux, the notation or the synopsis is very important. And again, looking at this, brackets, things are optional, ellipsis, you can make use of multiples. Now, further below, you can see that we have the options and their meanings. And you can see that one of the options that we have is -a, and you can also make use of --all. They both mean the same thing. And again, what's happening over here is that the A tells us that we are going to show all files, even those files that begin with a period. Typically, files that begin with a period are hidden from normal view. Now, the single dash in front of it tells us that the option is an abbreviated form, as opposed to a double dash, which typically means that the option is meant to be interpreted as an entire word. Now, let's go and have a look at the following. I'm going to do a directory listing right now, and I'm not going to specify an option. I'm not going to specify any arguments. And you can see that I have a result. You can see that I have directory A and I have file 1. Now let's go and make use of an option. So again, I'm going to use ls-a. And you can see over here that it now shows me those files that begin with a dot, that begin with a period. And again, those would typically be hidden from your normal view. Now what I'm going to do next is that I'm going to run ls-a ll. Now what's really important to remember over here is that I'm making use of 3 different options. A is going to be the one option, and I'm using the L option twice. So again, it's got a completely different meaning, as opposed to if I had to run ls-all. Now in this particular case, we are interpreting the entire word. In other words, all the characters that make up the option as one option. And you can see that we have a very different result. It's a directory listing using an option called -l. We're going to do a long listing right now, and we're going to do it against file 1. So ls would be the command, the -l would be the option, and then we have file 1, which would be an example of the argument. So let's go and have a look at that result. Now, a command may also be constructed in the following way, in which case I'm running the ls command using one option against 2 arguments. The 2 arguments would be file 1 and file A. And I'm not breaking any rules over here, because if we go back to the man page, which tells us more about how to make use of the ls command, in the synopsis it says, well, you can make use of multiple options, and you're allowed to make use of multiple arguments. So let's go and have a look at the output of that command, and you can see that it works perfectly. So guys, if you want to access man pages on a Linux system, you can make use of the command man, and then very often you could refer to a command or a configuration file, for example. So let's go and have a look at one more over here. I'm going to show you the man page for a tool called crontab, and you can see that the purpose of crontab is to maintain crontab files for individual users. Now look at the synopsis over here. You can see that it could get quite complex, and the interpretation thereof is very important. So looking at running the crontab command, you can run it against a file. So in this particular case, using this notation over here, you would use an argument. Further to that, the use of a user or the use of the -u option is optional. Again, it's enclosed in square brackets. Now looking at the notation slightly below that, we have crontab, and again, the -u and then the reference to the user as the argument would be optional. However, this is very interesting notation that we have over here. You see, when you have options that are separated by a pipe, it means that you can only make use of one of them at a time. So you could make use of crontab-l, or you can make use of crontab-r, or you can make use of crontab-e. You wouldn't be able to make use of those options in one particular command. And then the use of the -i and the -s, those would be completely optional. Now, looking at the next example that we have over here, you could say crontab, and then you would specify -n. And if you are going to make use of -n, you could optionally specify a host name. And then we have a couple of other examples of how you could execute crontab. Now the question that on it, that second example of the synopsis over here, you can see that every item over here is in square brackets. And that means that we can run the cron tab command without any options and without any arguments. Something important that you ought to know about right now is how to get out of a man page. As I showed you how to access a man page. To get out, simply hit Q on your keyboard.